Hi and welcome to Anxiety Free Life. My name's Naomi Stockman from My Local Hypnosis, and today I'm talking about a very impactful and prevalent topic of grief, which I often see in clients who come to me for depression and also for anxiety. Now, first of all, what do we need to know about this topic? Grief is a normal response to loss, and in our lives, because we're human beings in this planet and nothing here is permanent, we will all experience some form of loss in our life. We'll all have to go through the grief process, and it is a tough one. It is a tough one. It takes time to process grief, and we can get stuck in that grief cycle, and I'll talk about that a bit more as we go along. Now, grief is not just about death, although that's a very big one that can affect us, obviously quite deeply. But loss can involve all types of tangible and non-tangible things, as well as people, even ideas. And loss can be shocking and very traumatic. So it is something that we sometimes or quite frequently need to get support with. It's one of the hardest emotions to move through, hardest ones to process, and that's because it's irreversible. And there's only one way through, which is moving forward, and we'll talk a little bit about that as I go along. So pain can hold us back. So loss, anything where we are forced to be without something or someone. And it can be a tangible thing. It can be an objective thing, something that's in our life, like a loss of a house or a country or a fire or a job or an object, like just anything that's impactful to us. An intangible thing, like a dream or a concept, or an ability. Say, for example, if you've had an accident and yet now you are no longer able to perform a certain job that you had before, that's a whole different lifestyle that's ahead of us, and it can cause a lot of grieving. Even something like age, as time moves on and we lose our youth, and perhaps we have regrets or whatever, it can be hard for us to accept that that past is lost to us now. So, secondary losses. We have the initial loss, but then there's often, not always, but often secondary losses. So for example, if you have lost a job, you'll also then perhaps have lost income. And then from losing that income, there might be other secondary down the path. If you've lost somebody that you love, that may then cause other losses. So financial situations might change. You may then have to be forced to move, or there's a whole stack of follow-on effects from a primary loss, which can really impact people in their lives and make it even harder to move past and grieve. Grief is our response. It's a reaction and it's emotion. Now, emotion is governed by the unconscious mind and stored in the body. So we actually have that energy stored in our body and it needs to be released. So during the grieving process, there are certain things we need in order to move through. The first is a support network. No one can carry heavy emotions on their own. We need to be supported. We need to be heard. We need to feel understood. That having people around us, that can be family, friends, but it can also be counselors, therapists, doctors, anybody who is there, neighbors, whatever. We need to get to a point where we've closed that part off, closed off that chapter or that event, put it behind us, moved on, and accepted it, and created a different future that doesn't include that loss that we've experienced. Part of this means having a certain sense of personal power or agency, where you've got control of where to next and what next, and being able to forgive if there's somebody or some event that needs forgiveness, their self or others, and being able to create some kind of new internal representation of what the world is like without this loss. So I'm just going to go back a slide there. Risk factors for getting stuck in this grief cycle. When we feel powerless, helpless, feel that we've been wronged, that there's been no justice, there's a sense of shock, numbness, there's been multiple losses or absolutely incomprehensible loss where the way forward just seems too challenging, or where the loss is invalidated or not acknowledged. Blaming yourself is a big one, because if you're feeling guilty, that sense is going to just really anchor you in there. And where the change gap is really big. So where, you know, the life that you had prior to the loss and the life that you're expected to live after the loss, where the gap is just so big that it's so unfamiliar and hard to process. So one thing that comes up a lot, and people sort of feel a bit bad saying it, but when I'm speaking to people, they say, look, I feel terrible to say this, and I know that I shouldn't say this, but why me? And I say, look, that's fine. We'd all go through that. Why me? This is a phase to go through, but if you get stuck there, if you get stuck in the why me, you are not going to be able to move forward and progress, because you're moving away from peace. It's the torment. It's away from peace, away from a feeling of calm in your spirit, and perhaps even anger at God, the universe, fate, or whatever that, you know, would be so unfair. That feeling of injustice is what gets us stuck. So not everything in life that is traumatic causes trauma. So when there is helplessness combined with shock or fear or loss, when they're present together, we get traumatic grief. So shock, fear, loss, and no power, no personal power, we move into that helpless victim stage, and that can cause absolutely traumatic grief, anxiety, depression, the lot, because feeling safe is our, you know, when there's fear there, the world becomes unsafe. You know, this could happen again. You know, I felt safe before, but now I don't. Just the whole stuff where the trauma gets stuck. Now, the grief cycle, and there's a bit of a diagram there. There's very many extended and expanded variations of the grief cycle, but the first is that shock. This can't be true. This cannot be true. And then the rage of, and the bargaining, the what if this and what if that, and if only I had, and the self-questioning and all the avenues. The mind sort of like goes in absolutely every direction. And I looked at a couple of these grief cycles, and one person had said, you know, this is how the grief cycle should look. And then they've just got like this big thing of scribble and says like what it actually was like for me. And that, I would say, from personal experience and from talking to clients, is more accurate, that it's not like this smooth, I flowed through from the event to acceptance. There are studies that have been done on our internal level of happiness, and when we go through a loss, we can get back to the same level of happiness we were before once we've moved through the processing of the emotion and the event. Regardless of how great the loss is, it's not to say that it will ever feel that it's not something that's meaningful or sad, but if we can get to the other side of grief 100% once we go through and get to the acceptance phase. So looking at complex grief, where we get to the intrusive, distressing thoughts, where the mind is just racing, where we become obsessed or preoccupied with the loss, as specifically if it's a person, that can be quite painful. Avoiding places, avoiding songs, avoiding reminders, avoiding dates or social situations or groups of friends or that sort of thing. Using numbing and distraction. This can be everything from self-medicating with drugs or alcohol, or any other, even workaholism is a form of distraction. And that's just, I'm not ready to process. I don't want to feel this. I'm going to do anything to avoid feeling that. Irritability and emotional outbursts. So where, you know, the world just is too much, and blip, it's coming out, and it's like, you know, my mess gets all over everybody around me. And a sense of complete hopelessness, like, well, what is the point? What's the point here? If I have to feel like this, if this is what life's about, a lack of purpose. People sometimes get a bit of suicide ideation, depression, loss of identity. For example, who am I if I'm not, this person's partner or this person's mother or this person's child, or if I'm not in that job, or who am I if I don't have this house or car or friends, or who am I if I don't have this country anymore? Like where do I fit in? So loss creates, we have our world, and when you take like large chunks and just rip them out of it, it causes loss of identity. That's a really big topic. Identity is one of the primary, who am I, and knowing the truth of who you are and having that shaken and pulled apart can be really unsettling and derailing. It causes a loss of safety. There can be self-blame. Who am I now? The inability to self-regulate, which is a big one, emotionally, thought-wise, all that sort of stuff, and just knowing what's ahead, what is ahead for me in the future for since this has happened, and what purpose does it even have. So just all that coming up in us. It's like somebody just took the jar and just gave it a big shake, and it's just everywhere, and we need that to settle. So the first thing about grief is what happened, what actually happened. And that sort of can cause thoughts to come up right to our mind, focusing on, replaying the events like it's looping. Can I cope? And often the answer to that feels like, no, I don't feel I can. It's just too big, too much, and I don't want to. And then what does the future hold? So the three keys in grief are what happened, can I cope, and what does the future hold for me moving forward? So just looking at emotion and grief being a big, significant and quite heavy, intense emotion, our body and our unconscious mind process emotion. It's energy. It needs to be discharged. There is no quick way out of this. There's no pill you can take to make it go away. It needs to actually be acknowledged and felt and released until it's like, I guess, if you're running something underwater until the water runs clear. Once it runs clear, then there's some relief there. So it can feel really unbearable to go through that process at the time. And there can be blockages. If there's anger, blame, and we've talked about self-blame already, but blame of other people as well, injustice, shock, that can be stacked. So it's just like a massive stack of emotions that need to be processed. So when we release those emotions, there can be a sense of, I need to hold on to this. This is a big thing. If I let this go, I'm taking the meaning out of it. I'm invalidating this loss, or this is part of the significance of the love that I had for this person. I need to hold on to the pain, and so it's really important that we go through and clear those emotions, because there is no way forward but going through. And any blockages can cause us to just stay stuck in pain, and it's not a nice place to stay stuck, no matter how scary it is to move forward. Okay, so I think I missed something there. No, I didn't. Okay, so anxiety, depression, grief. If any of these are affecting you, please, I urge you to reach out, book a 20-minute complimentary call with me. We'll go through what it is that you're going through personally, and then look at a way forward and a solution that will involve releasing those emotions, processing those emotions, and getting you to a place of calm. So I'm just going to run through quickly our team. So we've got myself. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, a trauma therapist, a nutritionist. I use other modalities, EFT, NLP, TRTP, RTP, EP. There's a whole stack of letters there. Basically, we're using imagination, somatic, and body and mind processes, and hypnotherapy is definitely one of those. Tracy Lee is a fully trained program support counselor that works alongside me. Well, she's been working with me for 2 years now, and we are in the process of recruiting a men's support person as well. So I'd love to have you in our exclusive private Facebook group. It's called Anxiety Free Life. The URL is actually facebook.com/I choose strength within, I believe. But definitely jump onto our website, mylocalhypnosis.com.au, and check out any of the links on there. We've got a YouTube channel as well. I think it's under Naomi.Stockman. But definitely reach out on our website. If you fill out the form there, we'll get back to you, and you can also book a session on the website. Love to see you in one of the groups, or in person or online. Have a beautiful day.